And then we'll be going to...
Yeah, that one's loopy.
It's people.
Did an old gal get on there and pole dance?
Am I just a guest? Is that what I am?
No, you're part of.
Am I your guest?
One of us.
Google gobble google. Am I just a guest? Is that what I am? Oh, you're part of it. Am I your guest?
One of us.
It's weird hearing that.
Yeah, that reverb.
Well, that and what I just heard a second ago.
Well, you know, there's a couple seconds. Who broke this?
And we've got 4 watchers.
Actually, probably one or
6.
I do, however, want to do. There we go. I found a good, decent little set for $700. We'll do a gentleman's. Since my office is painted maroon, we'll do a gentleman's night. We'll wear top hats and
Monocles.
so today at the squad.
Indubitably.
No, that's his phone.
Okay. Now we're better now. How's that?
Really could have used that drink tonight.
Oh, go to the refrigerator.
No.
Well, yeah.
I've been waiting.
It's at a place I'm not living at anymore.
Everything okay?
It's getting there.
All right, we have.
We're coming up to the intro.
Yeah, see, I can get on this app I have. Holy crap, that's really loud. And I don't have to be on Facebook. It's called Facebook Page.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have your own page on there, you can just get on and share things and click a button. And I don't have to get any annoying messages.
Right.
I went over to Instagram because there's less complaining and crybabies. Oh, the new cards came in.
Oh, cool. Okay. Thanks. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I like that.
I just wanted to show you. Did I give you some last time?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, a stack of them.
Yeah, these are a lot better than the other ones.
Yeah. I like the logo, the glossiness.
Yeah.
Pum, 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 pum.
No, I've just been nose deep in psychology, so I could have used a drink to get out of
Right.
that mind frame.
Are we alone in the universe? Have aliens and UFOs really visited our planet and helped shape human history? Do mythical creatures really exist? Do Sasquatch, Yeti and other man-like beasts roam this earth? Do ancient serpents swim the depths of our oceans and seas? Are all of our favorite myths based on actual facts? Is there a supernatural realm? Do ghosts and spirits haunt their eternal graves? Are demons and non-human entities trying to harm the living?
That day did it come off.
Join us on Johnson County Paranormal as we delve deep into the mysteries of this world and the next. We will study and debate all sides of these mysteries scientifically and as accurately as possible. Welcome to the fantastic world of the unexplained. And now, here is the host of Johnson County Paranormal, Professor Josh Turner.
Good evening, Johnson County, and welcome to Johnson County Paranormal. I'm your host, Professor Turner. Across the table from me is the lovely and talented True Sasquatch, and sitting beside me is Matthew G., our resident skeptic. Well, how is everybody doing this evening?
We're doing good, doing good.
Very good. Well, we have got an exciting program lined up for the next 2 hours. We are going to dive headfirst into cryptozoology. And one of the biggest names in cryptozoology is, of course, Bigfoot. Bigfoot. So tonight we are going to be talking about Bigfoot and three what are probably pretty closely related but slightly lesser known cryptids. We'll begin our talk about Bigfoot / Sasquatch. Then we will get into the abominable snowman of the Himalayas, also known as the Yeti. And then
we can even get there.
If we even get there, because we've got a lot to cover. And then we'll move into a couple more obscure species, one from the Russian steppes called an Alma, and the other one from Indonesia called an Orang Pendek. But yeah, Bigfoot. So Bigfoot is one of those icons. Bigfoot is something that is universally known. I mean, even if you don't know a whole lot about monsters and cryptozoology and that kind of stuff, everybody knows who Bigfoot is.
Oh, yeah.
Bigfoot's right up there with the Loch Ness Monster and the abominable snowman. It's the Elvis of cryptozoology. So let's kind of cover a brief overview of what a Bigfoot's... Now, for those listening at home, Bigfoot and Sasquatch are two terms that we'll use fairly interchangeably. They're different names for the same kind of animal. All right, so a Sasquatch is a large ape-like creature believed to inhabit forest. Although found primarily in the Pacific Northwest, sightings and encounters have been reported from across...
I'm also found in Texas.
You are found in Texas. We're going to get there. If you hadn't cut me off, we got there. But also reported from across the United States, including Texas. In fact, there have been multiple Bigfoot sightings in Johnson County,
Yes.
especially out in the more rural areas, Ham Creek.
Ham Creek,
clothes on.
and out towards Somerville County, out towards Glen Rose. There's been several sightings out there as well, and even here in Burleson.
Yeah. No, that's a Wookiee, which is unrelated. But yeah, and some of these, like we'll get into later, some of these may represent actual encounters. Some of them are going to represent pranks and people just trying to be silly. And we're going to look at some of the more prominent examples of both.
Well, I met an old man years ago, back in the 80s when I worked at Counts Feed and Seed, who swore that he saw the white one in the northern part of Johnson County back in the 60s, the Fort Worth, Lake Worth.
Yeah, the Lake Worth monster.
Back in the... Are you familiar with the Lake Worth area?
A little bit.
Like you're going out Jacksboro Highway.
Oh, like you're going towards Hazel.
Yeah. There's that nature preserve there on the right. Back in the, around 66, 67, that used to be kind of a cruising place for teens and stuff like that, and fishermen and hunters as well. It was a very undeveloped area out there, except for the bars,
right,
going out farther towards Jacksboro. There was a white creature, a big, tall, white, hairy creature that...
You racist.
Well, but they said it limped, and they're thinking it might have been like an old Sasquatch that had that had turned, his hair turned gray and everything. But while people were parking out there and stuff, it had banged on windows.
Yeah, and this is the one that is super aggressive because there's a really well documented incident with the Lake Worth monster where it stands up on top of a hill, and depending on who tells the story, it either throws tires down at these kids that are in the car, or it throws a tire iron, or sometimes it even throws rocks. But the interesting thing about the Lake Worth monster is that that particular creature was described as almost more of a goat man, a satyr. It had some hooves and horns. So it wasn't necessarily that classic Bigfoot.
That seemed to, the original newspaper reports and stuff actually come out. There's several books on the deal, and I met a guy at a Bigfoot conference years ago.
And they have those.
That, as well... hysteria kind of gets in. So the horns and the hooves and all that stuff got added later. But the initial newspaper reports, it was reported in the news and on TV, and it didn't have the horns and stuff. It was an actual Bigfoot. And they actually had a couple plaster casts of I'm thinking there were like 18, 19 inch. But one of the feet had a club foot.
Okay.
Like it had been damaged or something, and because everyone described this thing walking with a limp.
Right.
And in about the 2 to 3 year period that people had sighted this thing, they all witnessed the same. That every witness said the same thing. It walked with a really bad limp, like it was not like it was hurt, but like it was crippled.
Yeah.
And that goes along with the plaster cast. Now, I don't know what happened to the plaster cast, but the actual Fort Worth, not the Fort Worth PD, but the Tarrant County Sheriff's Department actually had some plaster casts of it.
No kidding.
And they said the right foot, I believe it was very deformed, like it had been injured.
And there's another instance of that we'll talk about a little bit later, called the cripple foot tracks, where one foot is, it's morphologically fine. The other one had experienced some trauma because it's misshapen and it bent all to hell. And there were all kinds of theories as to what maybe had caused this. Did this thing step in a bear trap? Did it, was it naturally occurring due to arthritis? But yeah, we'll get to that in a second. But the majority of scientists tend to discount their existence because they cite a lack of irrefutable evidence. Now, the best irrefutable evidence that we can have is going to either be a live Sasquatch or a dead Sasquatch. The proof is in the pudding. And sad as it would be, it would take either an animal in captivity or dead body to prove once and for all that this thing was real. And there have been a few hoaxes that we'll talk about in a little bit where people have presented these Sasquatch corpses that they claim to have, and one of them,
that one guy,
there was a really bad one back in 2008, and it was
and that guy he's been in several hoaxes,
and he made $50,000 off of that. But all right, looks like we're getting some comments on there. But, most scientists, they say, okay, this is not a real biological creature. What we're seeing is a combination of folklore, misidentification, and outright hoaxes. And notable scientists like Jane Goodall, she was the lady that did the great work with the chimpanzees, and Grover Krantz, who was a forensic anthropologist, they've expressed interest in the creature and belief to a certain point. But being a professional scientist and admitting that you are a believer or you're willing to humor the existence of some of these creatures, it's a death sentence, because science is based on proof. Science is based on fact. It's based on hard, concrete evidence. And we just don't have that with these guys yet. And you can get labeled real quick.
Read the bottom one.
Yeah, I was...
The tuning out. Sorry,
Yeah,
I didn't mean to interrupt.
I'm trying to... Yep. I got her. Thank you, Chad.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And no, you're good. And you can get... I mean, it destroys your reputation, even without necessarily meaning to. Because science is like anything else. Science is cliquish. It's... It's got its little groups. It's got its little crowds. And, I mean, you say something to the wrong group, and they're going to blacklist you. They're going to mess you up.
Now, I am working on a program right now. I'm learning that I will be able to, on our Facebook Live, when I find videos and stuff, we'll be able to post on there. Mm-hmm. Still working on that.
Well, and we'll get there.
But we're going to get there. But there was one of them guys you was talking about. I cannot remember his name for the life of me. He's blonde-headed, has a beard.
Yeah.
I
think it's Krantz. I think it's Grover Krantz.
He is a foremost primate.
Well, he's an anthropologist.
But he knows his primates. Mm-hmm. And when he voiced his favor of Bigfoot and Sasquatch more than likely being real, his career
it tanked.
It tanked. Now he's seen on all the Bigfoot shows and everything like that. But he went from this huge anthropologist guy,
and this is a PhD, respected former professor.
Yeah, and now he's in a little small like Cheyenne, Wyoming anthropology department
because he shot himself in the foot professionally.
Yeah.
All right. So, what are some attributes of a Bigfoot? What are some physical characteristics? Well, these animals are 6 to 10 feet tall. They seem to weigh in at least 500 pounds, covered in dark brown or dark reddish hair, large, prominent eyes, and a pronounced brow ridge. That's, their eyebrows stick out.
Basically, the way I take
it's Neanderthal. It's an old caveman face.
Kind of a mixture between take a gorilla's face and make it more human, but with still a lot of the gorilla characteristics.
Yeah. And that's what's interesting is that is not a muscle and tissue issue. That is actually the way that the skull is formed, the cranium is formed, because there is a hard ridge of bone right above those eyes. So the skull of one of these things would be amazing to see, because I have a feeling that it would have a lot of man-like and ape-like characteristics. Now, technically, man is considered an ape, but we're the higher ape. Yeah. An ape is a primate that doesn't have a tail. Monkeys are the ones that have tails. But yeah, if we ever find the skull of one of these things, I think it would be really neat to see, because it would be the best of both worlds.
I think it would look a lot like what we have in museums of Neanderthals, and a mix between Neanderthals and gorillas.
Yeah,
because if you look at gorillas and Neanderthals, there's a close resemblance. I mean, there's some obvious discrepancies to the untrained eye, like mine.
Sure.
I couldn't tell you if that's a Neanderthal or if that's a gorilla. If you take out the really sharp canines and stuff, that the gorillas seem to have more prominent than that. But if you take out the teeth, I'm not going to be able to tell you.
Yeah,
which one's which.
If you know what you're looking at, it's pretty obvious. But yeah, to Joe Blow on the street, there's some marked similarities. One of the things that I always remark at when I see a gorilla skull is they have a huge, what's referred to as a sagittal crest. It's a big bony ridge that runs almost from the top of the forehead back. And the reason it's so massive is that's where the muscles that allow for chewing and powerful jaw movement hook in. And gorillas are, they eat wood, they eat trees, they eat this thick growth stuff.
But
and
they're omnivores.
They're omnivores. Right. They're omnivores. And which is, that's one of those $10 words from something that eats both meat and plants.
Like us.
Yeah, like us. Just like us. In fact, the majority of primates are omnivores. Well, it makes more sense zoologically to be an omnivore, because if you're in a bad place and you can't eat one thing, you can always eat another. You're not going to limit yourself with dietary restrictions and risk having to move off or going extinct. Yeah. But they always talk, too, with Bigfoot about there being a strong, unpleasant smell similar to that of a wet dog.
Yeah. And have you been around a gorilla that hasn't been groomed?
Yeah.
They stink.
And it could be the grooming issue. It could be maybe they're rolling in something. There's one school of thought that says that they spend a lot of time in the water, and they actually use rivers as highways to get from one place to the other undetected.
There has been some theories, like especially up in the Northwest, that they do like bears, and they get into the rivers and try to catch the salmon when they're spawning.
I can see that.
And I can see them being very successful at that with their, grass. Because look how successful bears are.
And that's just a dumb animal that's operating off instinct.
Now you take a creature that's... I always consider Sasquatch kind of in between, like the step between the big, silverback gorillas and humans.
Well, and that's a good way to look at it. What it's going to be, it's like if you have Sasquatch Sasquatch over here and silverbacks over here and humans over here. Sasquatch isn't an intermediate, and I don't think he's an intermediate species between the two. I think he represents a different branch because
an offshoot.
Yeah, an offshoot because the majority of the time, and I may be wrong, those transitional species, when one of them comes, the other one goes away.
We have a good question
What's
from Amanda Brosette Whitehead.
Okay.
But isn't man more closely related to chimps than gorillas?
They are, but chimps are apes. They're that higher order of primate, and the jury is still out on what how exactly Sasquatch fits into the taxonomy. So maybe he's more related to a chimp than a gorilla. I don't know. I've never met one. I've never seen one. The only thing I've ever seen of a Bigfoot is just the same blurry photos of the one walking across the creek and assorted other ones. That's a great question, and I don't know. I don't know where their lineage lies.
Hey, welcome from West Virginia. Connie Browning is watching.
Hey, Mrs. B, how are you? No, these are all old friends. So I'm very informal with them. In fact, Amanda is newly married. She married a good friend of mine from high school. Her and Michael tied the knot earlier this week, I think.
Well, congratulations, Amanda. You should be on your honeymoon instead of
listening to Johnson County Paranormal. But we are always happy to have you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And great question. Now, Amanda has a very strong science and medical background, so she would be an interesting person to talk to.
Yep.
All right, so let's get into the history of Bigfoot. Let's talk about where some of these stories may have originated. Now, wild man stories are found amongst the indigenous cultures in every continent except Antarctica. Do you know why they're not found on Antarctica?
There's no indigenous.
There are no indigenous people there. Indigenous is one of those. Indigenous means
there are pyramids, though, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, that's whether they're pyramids or not. But every culture in the world, every original indigenous culture has stories of these wild men, these feral man-like creatures, if you will. Ours is probably just the most famous.
Have you ever heard a Bigfoot?
Yeah, I listen to you all the time.
No, I'm talking about a wild Bigfoot.
Do you want... No.
Okay.
Has anybody ever heard a real...
Yes. There's possibility. Okay. I take it you're a hunter.
I'm more of a fisherman.
But you know your local wildlife.
Oh yeah.
Like you know the sound of a wildcat.
Yeah.
Or a bear or
Well, if I'm hearing a bear, I'm
dogs, running. Coyotes, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, this was taken in Oklahoma.
Well, that's all you had to say.
This is there's a lot of...
We love our viewers in Oklahoma.
But this is supposedly a Bigfoot howl.
That's Bobo.
Did you hear that?
No, because I'm half deaf.
I got you beat.
You'll have to turn. Hold on, let me... Do it again.
Okay. Let me find the volume on this thing, see if I can turn it.
I heard that.
Yeah, this is at a campsite. Let's see.
That's not Bigfoot. All right, stop. Collaborate and listen.
This was 2014 in Oklahoma, up by Broken Bow.
Shut up. That's the name of a real place.
She sounds like somebody screaming to me.
Yeah.
But the thing is,
Remember, I'm the skeptic here.
yeah, I know. But now here's where we're getting into my area of expertise. I'm a sound guy. Okay, we can mimic those sounds, but they have taken scientists and audiologists have taken sounds like this. We can go out. You can record that sound in the wild, and then I can go out there and I can mimic that sound and sound a lot like it. You take those same recordings, put them side by side.
They're going to be different.
Well, humans have a certain range from like X to Y. These sounds go from like Z to B. Tones and frequencies that humans
Can't do.
no human can make, and they're even though we can mimic and get the sounds, they're getting into frequencies that we're not able to hear audibly, but animals can. And animals can hear a lot of different.
Yeah, they hear on. I mean, of course, nature equipped them to hear at higher pitches and frequencies and all
lower,
that. Sure,
and
yeah.
lower
Elephants
as
too.
well. And there's besides the howls, there's a lot of what they call wood knocks. Great apes, which are chimpanzees, gorillas, stuff like that.
Then there's the mediocre apes, which are Hillary Clinton.
But chimps have been found to use make their own tools. Gorillas as well, but not as much.
Not to the extent that chimps
Yeah,
do. No.
Chimps will use sticks to get termites. They will use stuff to knock stuff out of trees. They improvise. They have an intelligence. They also use sticks, and gorillas will do this too. They will take a big stick and knock against a tree trunk to intimidate or to let gorillas on the next mountain over know, hey, I'm over here. Humans don't typically do this, but
We have cell phones, and
there are a lot of
Picket
wood
fences.
knocks. Now, you see the guys on the Bigfoot hunting shows and stuff.
Yeah,
They will
Bobo.
Oh God, Bobo. They will try to mimic
Bobo is
these wood knocks, but if you think about it, they can go out to the same spot and take a baseball bat and hit a tree, and they're not going to get the same frequency and the same volume of sound from that distance of where that other one was recorded.
right.
And that goes to, I say, strength and,
That to
and
me,
size of.
and it suggests an intelligence. It suggests that we're dealing with something that's not your garden variety animal. This isn't your standard dumb primate. This is something that is very, very close to human level intelligence. Maybe not quite there yet, but it's close. It's just really interesting. But let's go back to kind of the role that these wild men play in various indigenous cultures. Now, depending on who you're talking to, sometimes they're thought to be protective spirits, like defenders of nature. In other cases, they are seen as tricksters or malicious creatures. Kind of like the boogeyman of the natural world. Something that a mother she'd use to say, don't go outside at night, or the wild man of the woods will get you and carry you away. In fact, what was that?
That's just mean.
Well, hey, it works. We had a panther that lived under my table for many years when I was little. Never missed a meal either. But Daniel Boone and Theodore Roosevelt were both said to have had experiences with Bigfoots. And I couldn't find a lot of information on what exactly it was that happened to them. But Daniel Boone was one of the very first pioneers, one of those very first frontiersmen. And there's no telling what kind of crazy stuff he saw.
About that, but I heard that years ago that he come across a wild man and his description. He was warned by the Indians that there was a wild man around, and his description fit what when someone says they see a Bigfoot now.
It lines up. There was a question about the sound clip. Dalen Delaney asked, what was the sound clip under? Was it in Broken Bow, Oklahoma? Yes, ma'am, I believe it was, according to what Kevin said.
Yes, and I posted on there, it was in 100 rabbit holes that I went down through on YouTube.
Yeah, because YouTube leads to some weird places real quick.
Yeah.
But, yeah, and then there's Theodore Roosevelt. And, Theodore Roosevelt was a
big hunter.
Yeah, and a card-carrying badass just in general. And there's no telling the adventures that Theodore Roosevelt had. So the fact that those two men encountered something like this, and if it is more than anecdotal, if it's not just, a hunter story or somebody just trying to build these guys up after the fact.
Like the one-armed fisherman, I caught a fish this big.
Right. That adds some credibility, I think, to it, and it strengthens the legend. Now, in 1958, the first large footprints were found in Del Norte County, California, by a road crew. After trackways appeared multiple times, Bob Titmus was brought in to cast the tracks and plaster. The story was then published in the Humboldt Times, along with a photo of the crew holding one of these tracks. Locals had been calling the unseen track maker Big Foot. Big space foot, since the late summer. The article shortened this to Bigfoot, one word, and the story gained international attention when it was picked up by the Associated Press. Some would later attribute the tracks to Ray Wallace, saying that he was the creator of this hoax. And, it's one of those where this had been happening enough times that the lumberjacks and the woodsmen were aware that there was something unusual going on, and that their guard was kind of up. They may have been paying a little bit more attention to it than they would have. But isn't it funny how the Associated Press gets a hold of it, and a cultural legend is born?
Oh, yeah. Well, even when what's those groups that went to Mount Everest in the 50s? Tom Jones or Tom Jones.
No, he's the singer.
No. Tom Slick.
Yeah. We'll get to him in a minute.
But they get up there and they were talking about the footprints, and the Sherpas were all like, "Oh, we've been seeing them for years in the snow and in the mud up here."
Mm-hmm. And in fact, they think they may even have some physical evidence, like stuff in some of their temples. But there's a few really famous encounters that we're going to get into with Bigfoot, and take these what you will. In 1924, a prospector named Albert Ostman claimed to have been abducted by Sasquatch and held captive by a family of creatures in British Columbia. Now, this guy, he was out at his prospecting station one night, goes to bed in his sleeping bag, wakes up a few hours later and realizes that he is slung over the back of one of these Bigfoots as it's walking through the woods. And he said that the Bigfoot was never overly hostile to him, but every time he tried to get away, the Bigfoot made it very clear, and this isn't just one Bigfoot, this is an entire family of Bigfoots. They made it very clear that they wanted him to stay with them. In fact, it was finally the prospector slipping the daddy Bigfoot some tobacco that made the daddy Bigfoot sick enough that he turned his guard away long enough and he was able to slip out. And they talk about too that the Bigfoots, they took care of him. They brought him food, they brought him berries, and he gave them the food stuff that he had in his pockets, that he had in his sleeping bag when he went to bed. There's a lot of really interesting details in this, and
Yes, there is.
Part of me wants to say that it's a hoax. Part of me wants to say that this is something that some dude made up. But then there's that other part that says, maybe he really did have an encounter with one of these things. Because this was back in 1924. Mankind's presence in the forest was not nearly as extensive as it is now. And maybe they hadn't learned to be quite as afraid of us then as they are now.
Well, I see that them as possibly being... they have dealt with Native Americans who treated them with respect. So, I'm sorry, but the white men...
We don't have respect for anything.
We come in and we destroy what... We say, this is... I know that, but in general, the Western culture, we come in, we say, this is lovely.
Have you been to India?
We're going... I said Western culture.
Hey, I'm just saying. But, you hater?
No, I'm just saying as a
people in general, yes.
Yeah, we come in and we see something that we like and we love, and we immediately tear it down and build something else. And it just boggles my mind. It always has. You was talking about that. There was a story I recall too that I think was around the time, like in Russia, where they supposedly...
We'll get to that one because that may not be a Bigfoot. That may be another one of the related creatures.
A wild woman, where they had a wild woman, and she actually had babies from the guy.
What is wrong, Matthew, friend? You don't like the Russian women?
Thinking all of us that are married, we know what wild women are.
Hey, in America, you find the Bigfoot. In Soviet Russia, Bigfoot find you. All right. So in 1924, Fred Beck and 4 miners claimed to be attacked by several what they called ape men who threw large rocks at their cabin in what would later be called the Ape Canyon ambush in Ape Canyon, Washington. The attack occurred after one of the miners shot and possibly killed one of the creatures. The event was widely publicized at the time, but when Beck wrote a book about it in 1967, he claimed that the creatures were mystical beings from another dimension, and that he had dealt with them and many other weird creatures and stuff his entire life. There were local rumors that Beck may have also been the victim of local pranksters who had planted fake footprints. So that's one of those less than plausible stories.
We have another question from Amanda Brossett Whitehead.
Mrs. Whitehead, go right ahead.
Are there Native American accounts of Bigfoot?
There are, and this may have been where we had some of our audio problems, but stories of Bigfoot-like creatures occur in every Native American tribe, from the Iroquois to the east, the Seminoles down in Florida, to the Comanches that we would have had in this part of the world, to the Californian, whose names escape me at the time, and even up to the Inuits in Canada. Now, Bigfoot, to them, depending on the culture, can occupy different places. In some instances, they're seen as protective spirits. They're seen as, not quite man, not quite human, something different but real. There's other ones where they're boogeyman type creatures. They're used to, frighten children and instill proper behavior. And in some of the other ones, they're just kind of an unusual part of the forest. They're just some sort of big weird animal that you see from time to time, kind of like a elk or a moose or a grizzly bear, something like that. But yes, ma'am, they do occur in the majority of the indigenous cultures that we know about.
Yeah, Sherry Heath also had a good question. Said, anyone ever watched Scott Carpenter videos? If so, what's your take on his findings? I'm posting right now that I haven't personally, but I will this week, and if she tunes in next week, I'll let her know what I think about that.
Yeah, Scott Carpenter, huh? Okay, then we get into another one in 1941 with a lady named Jeannie Chapman and her children who flee their home when a 7.5-foot tall Sasquatch walks into their front yard. And I'd be like, okay, yeah, I think I don't know that I'd flee my house, but I'd at least run back. I'd run inside it and lock all the doors. We may be getting a call later this evening from a similar story about that. But, it's just an interesting story from 1941. Then, of course, in 1958, you have the Bigfoot story, which appears in the Humboldt Times and makes Sasquatch a worldwide phenomenon that it is now. Now, 1967 is a big one. 1967, Roger Patterson and Robert Gimlin film an alleged Bigfoot at Bluff Creek, California. This footage becomes known as the Patterson-Gimlin film, and even to this day it remains a controversial piece of evidence. If it's fake, it's a really good fake.
Okay. I have my thoughts on this,
Okay.
and I watched a lot of this. Have you seen the Patterson-Gimlin film?
I'm assuming it's
that's-
someone walking through the creek bed.
Yes.
Yeah, everybody's seen, yeah.
Okay.
Now, let me, before we jump into it, let me, just for the folks at home, what makes the Patterson-Gimlin film so interesting is that there are a lot of really strange details. A lot of... it seems like
One
it
is a
had...
female.
Yeah, it's a girl. If this had been a hoaxster, somebody just out there trying to do something funny, they put an absurd amount of thought in this. Like you said, it appears to be the female of the species because there are very prominent breasts.
Yes.
Another interesting thing is when it turns to look at the camera, the face is almost completely hairless. It's not as woolly and shaggy as nearly as much as the rest of the body is. Also, if you examine the film up close and under microscope and all of that, you can see muscle movement underneath the fur. You can see the different muscles contracting and moving up and down.
And the gait.
And the gait.
If you take measurements, they have done scientific evidence with people and primates and stuff like that. People cannot walk as this creature does. Mm-hmm. The legs are short and powerful. It's a long-bodied animal. The arms are a lot longer than ours. But its gait, its posture, the way it stands, and the way it turns, humans cannot replicate that. And another thing, at the time that this was done, and everybody said it was a guy in a monkey suit, the Oscar-winning scientific effects for movies that throughout those years was Planet of the Apes. Have you seen those from the 60s? Those were revolutionary.
Yeah.
Special effects, makeup, and art, stuff like that.
And those creatures are nowhere near what you see in this one.
Yeah.
And we go back to gait. Another thing is when they look at the way that this thing is walking and they look at the way that the muscle movement is connected to the movement of the legs, this thing appears to be injured. It appears to have a little bit of a limp.
To its right side.
To its right side. And someone had even suggested perhaps a hernia or some kind of internal trauma to the muscles there. And if you're just a costumer, do you really want to put that much effort and that much thought into a video that lasts that long?
Well, after Patterson and Gimli initially filmed that, because, they were on horseback. And they come up on, everybody's like, well, it's so shaky and everything. Well, for one, they're seeing a creature they've never seen before. It's huge.
Yeah.
It's walking across there. He's on horseback. He's trying to get this thing steady, but he's scared bootless. Yeah. I'm trying to keep it clean for your boy over there. But like you said, it happens that quick. They see it, it's in the tree line, and it's gone. They wait their period of time, and they go over there, and you can see the footprints in the mud. They can't make the gate. No. The gate is a lot longer than people. They estimate this thing to be, between 7 foot and 7.5 foot?
Yeah, it's a big... She's a big girl.
Yeah. And
we might specify for the folks at home, when we use names like Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, we're not talking about just one animal. There's got to be a substantial breeding population of these things. Because if there was just one or two, they'd be an anomaly at best. There wouldn't be stories that persist as long as... For centuries.
There has to be a breeding population.
Yeah, and the interesting thing with the Patterson-Gimlin footage is that this animal's not hostile. This animal's not necessarily in too much of a hurry to get away. It's not like it bolts and runs. No, it strides. Now, it looks over its shoulder a few times, and it's like, okay, I don't want those guys on the horse to come anywhere near me. I want to keep my eyes on them. But it's just a Bigfoot lady on a casual stroll down a creek bed.
there are also occasions of Bigfoots. There's a cabin up in Canada. These people were having problems with. They thought it was bears.
I saw that one.
They're hunters. Bears don't throw rocks. They got bombarded one night by rocks, these huge howls and everything. So they thought, okay, we're going to fix this little red wagon. So they did this kind of bear trap type deal that they do around when they're not there. They take these boards with these long screws and they put them down. Mm-hmm. And they put them under the windows and around the doors because this thing was beating the crud out of there. And these guys were seasoned hunters, have been there. They were later than their middle ages. They're probably late 50s, early 60s. They know this area. They know what's there. They were scared. This thing was shaking the foundation on the cabin. Well, when they put the thing out the next night, it come back, started throwing rocks again, big rocks, hitting the roof, banging on the side of the building, and it stepped on them things by the door. To this day, there is no DNA match to the blood and the hair samples that they've taken off of this thing, but that thing hasn't come back either. Yeah. But they put like 4-inch long screws.
And we're going to get into that a little bit with the physical evidence. But, all right, so we're going to jump forward in time to 2007. There's a really interesting encounter, too. A guy named Rick Jacobs captures an image of a supposed...
I'm
sorry?
I got to take him downstairs.
Okay, no worries. So this guy named Rick Jacobs captures an image of a supposed Bigfoot using an automatically triggered camera attached to a tree. The Pennsylvania Game Commission says it's a picture of a bear with really, really bad mange. Now, have you seen this picture? Because
no, I haven't. Now, what was it?
It's the guy named Rick Jacobs. So look for the Rick Jacobs Sasquatch photo. Now, in this one, it doesn't seem to be an upright creature. It almost appears to be like it's walking down on all fours, kind of like how babies and kids do when they get bored sometimes and they get on all fours and they walk with their butt up in the air. That's what it looks like to me. It looks more like a sickly bear than something that's a primate. But game photos are notoriously blurry.
These are pretty clear.
Those are pretty clear.
And to me, that doesn't look
like what
a bear, but it looks more like a chimpanzee.
Yeah.
Folks out there, pull this up. I googled Rick Jacobs Sasquatch pic and comes up with some fascinating pics, but it doesn't look like a bear, and
it's too slender. Bears are bulky and
and so is the Sasquatch. These are long armed and they're it's kind of looking like a long-legged chimpanzee. Mm-hmm. Is what it looks like.
But doesn't it remind you, too, of what kids will do when they're walking we get down on all fours and you walk with your butt in the air?
Yeah. Now, somebody did that's not a bear. I'm sorry. If anything, it looks more like okay, there's one that looks like a bear cub. They did the three pictures.
Yeah, that's not a bear. That's more of that's a primate. That almost certainly has to be a primate. Now, Amanda is just asking a lot of great questions tonight. Hey, Amanda, if you're listening, you are more than welcome to call into the show. 817-506-7257. Again, that's 817-506-7257, and we would love to answer some of these questions and have a good conversation with you. But to answer your question about population size, in order to have an animal of that size, smallest number for a viable population, I can only see part of the comments, you got to have creatures, I would think, at least a couple thousand?
Well, look in Texas at the Black Panther population that's coming around.
It's going to be spread out for several months.
A typical Black Panther around this area, they have a territory of about 150 miles. Okay, and that's one. When they get into breeding season, they go looking, and but they may travel 150, 200 miles to find a breeder. Somebody else to breed.
Yeah. And the territories for these animals and the Sasquatch might be tremendous.
Yeah, and so with a Sasquatch, who knows? Yeah. They might have.
And let's
they might migrate.
They might. And let's take a moment to preface something, because I don't want to fall into the same rabbit hole, the same classification that people on some of those History Channel and Discovery Channel shows do. We don't know the answers to these questions. All we can do is speculate, because we don't have captive examples of these animals. The best we can do is just infer. It's make educated guesses, and try to keep them relatively intelligent at the same time. But there's just a lot of things that we don't know.
We was talking about that Jacobs picture.
Yeah.
Now here's an interesting picture, a little side by side they did of one of the pictures from the game camera and a thin bear cub. Mm-hmm. And I see what they're talking about, where that could be.
Yeah.
But I also I don't see that as a Sasquatch either. I see that if it's a primate, I see more of a chimpanzee.
And look at the gut that the little bear has.
Mm-hmm.
The primate over here doesn't have that.
Yeah.
This is a much more man-like shape than the ursine over here, the bear. Unless it's a sickly bear.
Yeah, it very well could be.
But it's something.
Yeah. But as far as Sasquatch, I say no. Bear, maybe. If it's primate, I say maybe a chimpanzee. But it's not going to be... No. You can tell by the other pictures, it's not anything that's 8-9 foot tall. It may be 4 foot at the most.
Of course, it could also be a juvenile.
Very well could
Some little teenage hoodlum punk out, doing selfies in front of a game cam. I don't know.
Body hasn't grown into its legs and arms.
Yeah. You know how puppies are, with those big feet and those big ears.
That's true.
And Amanda, or anybody else that's listening, we would love to have somebody call in and talk with us.
So, Matthew, I want to ask you.
I'm feeling really skeptical tonight, so be careful.
Well, I know. Remember, the night is young.
After all that we've talked about, are you still as skeptical?
I'm even more skeptical.
Okay,
you're even more.
We've just barely.
And that I just walked in on that picture. Where's that picture taken?
I'll give you the background from that. All right. So in 2007, Rick Jacobs captures the image of a supposed Sasquatch using an automatically triggered game camera attached to a tree. The Pennsylvania Game Commission says that it is a picture of a bear with severe mange.
I don't buy chimpanzee because we don't have chimpanzees here.
Well,
I beg to differ. There is about 150 wild chimpanzees about 30 miles west of Seminole, Texas.
Well, that's because they escaped from that zoo.
They've been living there for over 100 years.
Yeah, and they're fat and overweight.
No, they're not.
God, you are mean tonight.
I saw a video.
No, them suckers are mean and wild.
I'll shoot them.
There's camels. There's out there. They're wild camels, but there's a whole big. At last count that I heard, there was like 150.
And that's going to wreak havoc on our local wildlife. I'd shoot them.
Yeah, but still. All right, so. All right, 2008.
Okay. Here's the pictures of that Jacobs game camera deal.
Let me see.
That one's too little, but
that's a problem with game pictures. They're horrible quality.
Yeah. Okay. See, that kind of looks like a bear cub right there, but I don't know.
We'll go back. I didn't actually get to see the main picture. I can look at it while y'all talk.
So then again in 2008, this guy named Rick Dyer and Matthew. Hello. Okay.
Well, I was gonna tell him to disconnect it. But.
All right. So Rick Dyer, and these are the assholes that kind of put a hitch in the giddy up for the Bigfoot phenomenon, the legitimacy of it.
Looks like a person.
Right. In 2008, Rick Dyer and Matthew Whitten post a video on YouTube saying that they found the body of a dead Bigfoot. They are given $50,000 by various TV stations who want exclusive interviews. After the press conference, the body was found to be a Halloween costume filled with possum guts. Dyer and Matthew Whitten admit it. They admit that it was a hoax to get back at a Bigfoot researcher who was a jerk to them.
Okay, this is the problem that this area runs into. You have not just skeptics, but you have people that go out of their way to create hoaxes, just to
mess with people,
and so that's what people like you see.
I'll look past that.
Yeah.
With everything, it doesn't matter what it is. With everything, there's always a hoax.
But the general populace, they hear of stuff like this, and that's what sticks with them. The negative is what sticks with them,
and that's true across the board for everything. It's the negative that can outshine the positive in a lot of cases. But I don't know. It doesn't do cryptozoology any favors when stuff like that happens, and stuff like that happens an awful lot.
Yeah.
The next one's kind of a sad one. The next one shows what happens when trying to be cute backfires. In 2012, a Montana man is hit by a car and killed while wearing a ghillie suit and wanting to fake a Bigfoot sighting. So, at the risk of saying karma, karma.
Well, guys like that. That's nothing. He deserved what he got.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I'm sorry if I'm not going to kill. But there's people out there. They're going to see that. They're going to. There's people that swerve to hit a deer because they think
car insurance,
and venison.
You imagine how cool the head of a Sasquatch would look over your fireplace? Like, yeah, I got Bigfoot right here. I got the Loch Ness Monster over there. Chupacabra's going to be in next week, but man, I got the whole damn set.
And you remember that sausage you ate last week? That wasn't a sausage.
Okay. All right, so let's get into the explanations of all of this phenomena. Gigantopithecus is one that we keep coming back to time and time again. And Gigantopithecus is this fossil ape from Asia that we have really, really poor fossil remains of. All we've got are a few teeth and part of the jaw. And, again, you and I have had this conversation. That's where paleontology doesn't do itself any favors sometimes. You can tell a lot about an animal with just a few pieces, but you also have to infer a tremendous amount. And I think one of the reasons that Gigantopithecus keeps coming up in connection to Bigfoot is that it's the only thing we know of that really kind of fits that Bigfoot plan. Now, you might be wondering, all right, the Gigantopithecus is a creature from Ice Age Southeast Asia. How did something like that end up in North America? Well, about less than 50,000 years ago, there was a land bridge that existed from the old world into the new, down the Bering Strait, right up there where kind of where Alaska and Russia are today. And this thing was only 13 miles long. So, and there was a lot of exchanging of wildlife, creatures from the new world traveling into the old world, creatures from the old world coming into the new world. That's how human ancestors came to the new world, is over this land bridge. Now, why wouldn't another species of primate, perhaps a really big species of primate, come over the land bridge too? And maybe its descendants became what we know as Sasquatch today. This is less than 1 million years ago, so it could still be very, very close to its original basal form. I like that idea. That idea makes a decent amount of sense scientifically. You have to take it with a fair amount of salt, but at least we're explaining things intelligently. We're trying to not sound completely retarded when we talk about this stuff. And, I say why not? The next one that we get into is they start to blame some of the other species of hominid, humanoid creatures. They talk about maybe a little animal called a Paranthropus, maybe a Neanderthal, maybe even Homo erectus, or a Homo heidelbergensis. And all of these creatures are much, much better represented in the fossil record than Gigantopithecus is. They're also smaller than Gigantopithecus is, and they're smaller than what we consider a Bigfoot to be. But, maybe there's been some adaptation and modification and a wee bit of evolution over the years that made these things a little bit taller, a little bit bigger.
Look at us as humans over the generations. We're getting bigger in size.
That's because we don't close our mouths.
Well, I'm talking height, though. You go 100, 150 years back, the average height of a man in the United States was around 5'6". Now the average is around 5'10", 5'11". Who knows what it's going to be in another 100 years,
Have we taken a commercial break? It feels like we're overdue.
No, we have not.
Okay. We are going to take a quick commercial break, and we will be back to talk more cryptozoology on Johnson County Paranormal this evening, and we hope you'll join us too. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Thank you. I am going to go pee because my eyes are turning yellow. Glad you heard that, aren't you, Miss Lily?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm just listening.
Oh. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that you got to take with a grain of salt, but then there's also a lot of stuff. Because I'm looking at some of these pictures that just like, really?
Well,
yeah, that's Photoshop. There's people out there that they want to try to screw everybody over. That's what sucks. When he gets back, I'm gonna run because we got 2 sets of commercials. We went a whole hour.
You did. Huh? Yeah, no, you did. No, I don't buy any of it. Hell, I can sit in my house at night and imagine I see something.
Yeah.
That and tonight I'm overly skeptic, so I don't want to say too much because then I'll just come off as an asshole.
No, that's why you're here. People love that. I like it. I like a good argument.
Well, Josh was saying I should do one more show to let everybody know that I'm going to go off for a little while. I was like, I'll just post it and say I'm going to go live for mine for a little while. I've got a lot of business stuff I've got to catch up on.
Go through the feed. I'm going to go take a piss right quick.
I wish we could get Amanda to call.
Oh,
Sweet Caroline. I was just telling Kevin, I said I'm overly skeptical tonight, so
okay.
I hadn't said much because I'll come off as an asshole. And he goes, "That's what everybody likes."
It really is.
Well, I don't like being an asshole.
Do you have the ability to tag people in that?
Yeah, if I get on.
I want to see if maybe you could tag my dad.
Let's see, edit post. Well, if he's on here, I can.
No, he's on Facebook. His name is George.
Let's see if I can remember at GEORGE.
Turner.
It's not letting. So you said George. No, it's not letting me. Let me see if it'll let me tag you. I don't know why it's not showing the pictures. I can try to get back there and do it from the computer. Let's see. Oh, don't fall.
Hello, I'm the Loch Ness Monster. Don't worry, I'll be on future episodes of Johnson County Paranormal. I don't look like a hand in the blurry photos. Talk soon.
Oh, God. Doing the Yoder.
That's funny.
Johnson County, but Yoder.
Hey, do you think you can tag my dad in that? Because I can't.
Yeah, it's not letting me pull up pictures.
Should do it.
He's got to like the page.
I think he does.
Okay.
But
We got less than a minute on there.
Oh, you got to run 2 sets of commercials.
They already did.
No,
Well,
he's got to go potty.
I already went.
No, he's got to go potty.
I thought he already did.
No, him. Tim, that
Who the
guy.
hell's Tim?
That guy right there. Can you not see him?
What is Tim?
My point exactly. I just created a Sasquatch.
Okay, first of all, you can see Sasquatch. Sasquatch are blurry. Tim is fucking invisible. Tim is not a Sasquatch.
He's got a cloaking
If
device.
anything, Tim is a holdophant, which we'll talk about in later weeks.
No, he's
No. Don't you put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby. Don't you put that evil on me.
All my buddies are commenting saying, "Dude, you look grumpy as fuck."
Yeah, he is grumpy as
I'm grumpy.
that.
I'm grumpy tonight. Well, it's because I've been stood up three shows in a row.
Nobody knows the trouble Matthew's seen. Nobody
can I say something?
knows his
5,
sorrow.
4, 3, 2,
gonna-
1.
And we are back on Johnson County Paranormal, where over the commercial break we've been taking cheap shots at one another.
Yeah,
Boy.
no, me.
Well, and
Trying to get Grumpy Pants to talk.
yeah, somebody's in a mood tonight. Is it because you don't believe in Bigfoot?
No,
All right, so
I mean yes.
Hannah Hardy said, "Hi, Matthew."
Hey, Hannah.
oh, see, you have people that care about you, sort of.
I'm me. Everybody cares about me.
I don't. I don't think he does.
That's not what you said last night.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. If I was that way, I could do a lot better than you. Just saying.
Hey,
I'm getting rid of all the.
Yeah. Anyways, we apologize for that because we like to keep it classy
Where's mine?
on Johnson County Paranormal. All right, so let's deviate from Bigfoot and let's talk about one of Bigfoot's cousins. All right. I'm trying to run a professional show here, and you two drunken jackasses are messing it up. All right. Not yet. Hell, that's why your wife wanted me to give you a ride home. All right. So I think we've got a much better understanding of Sasquatch for right now.
Yeah.
But let's move into something that may be a different species in the same family, or it may be something completely different. Let's talk about the Yeti. Now, the Yeti is an ape-like creature which inhabits the Himalayan region of Nepal and Tibet. It's one of the more famous creatures in cryptozoology, and it's considered a parallel myth to the Bigfoot of North America. So that means basically we've got Bigfoot, the Nepalese and the Chinese have the Yeti.
I think they're in the same family.
I think they are too. What's interesting is that the governments of Southeast Asia and that part of the world believe in the Yeti very, very strongly, and we'll get into that in just a few minutes. It has numerous names among the tribes of the area, and it's more commonly known in our culture as the Abominable Snowman. Amanda, if you're still listening, it would be really interesting, I think, to look at the Yeti from an anthropological standpoint, like we did the Bigfoot, and to see some of the myths and legends that the indigenous folks in China and Nepal and the Himalayas have about these creatures.
There was a video that I want to find, and I want to show Matthew. It's this couple that were up in the Himalayas, and they were hiking up this mountain ridge to ski down, and
I saw that guy.
yes,
Yeah.
she turned her camera. It's an actual video camera. And this thing gets up out of the snow. They had passed by it.
that's just a man with his backpack on.
I don't see a backpack. I don't see a backpack at all there.
You don't see a backpack?
But wait. You know
Rucksack.
what I do see there? And I hope you see it too. Do you see the cooler that he's holding? It's a Yeti. Thank you, folks. I'm here for the next
Let me
2
show
hours.
the picture.
Yeah, show them the picture. And that's one of the better examples of Abominable Snowman.
When was that taken?
That comes from, I want to say, within the last 4 or 5 years. Does that sound about right?
So you mean to tell me 4 years ago they couldn't take a better quality of a picture?
Okay.
No, that was that's a still shot. It's an actual video
Yeah.
of this thing walking.
And it is clear. It is pristine.
I'm going to find
Well,
it.
you
It's
find
much
that.
clearer and much less blurry than the Patterson
Well, I
Gimli.
could do.
All right, but so with our Yeti, it's an ape-like creature. We've got that. I got a All right, so it got its name, the Abominable Snowman, in 1921 after a mile-long set of tracks were discovered along a mountain pass. And I just happen to have a picture of some of those tracks right here.
That actually tasted pretty good after that mint.
What was it?
This Bud Light. Ugh.
Now, okay, I would be willing to offer you a much better picture of the Abominable Snowman.
I thought
something-
the Abominable would be white, just like a
Well.
polar bear.
Some
Some of them are, some of them aren't.
some of them are not. Look at the Bengal tigers that are
Now,
in that area.
I don't want you to spoil this one for Matt, but you've seen this photo of the Abominable Snowman too, haven't you?
Oh, yeah.
I want to
Yeah.
see
Yes,
this.
that one's.
Okay.
Let me see.
This one is very well
That was the
documented.
epitome.
This is the epitome.
I have a
And
funny
this-
suspicion this is gonna be a good one.
It's the thing about Bumbles. Bumbles bounce.
Ah, that's hilarious.
And then we're gonna hold that up to the monitors. So folks at home
Yes,
can see it
you know
because-
what? I've seen this as a child.
Yeah, this is the epitome. So
Yeah.
so you admit to the existence of the Abominable Snowman?
No, I admit to that.
Well, that's the Abominable Snowman.
It's bull.
I'm Mr. Heat
It's the wrong movie.
I'm Mr. Oh.
That was a good movie too. All right, so the Yeti, and I have succeeded. All right, so they find this trackway of Yeti footprints that go for 1.5 miles, and the tracks look like that, and they're relatively fresh. There is no, they haven't had time to sink in and melt or the snow to reform. They're pristine. And these things, this isn't just one or two of them. This is a trackway that stretches on for over 1 mile.
Where's it go after a mile?
I didn't say.
No.
It probably, I don't
It's to
know.
rocks and stuff like that.
That's-
Somebody
That's the thing.
washed
The
them away.
Himalayas are very rocky. Well, you've seen like Mount Everest and everything, and it gets so cold up there that people our size, we walk across that, we can't break through that crust. We're not heavy enough. We don't usually leave a whole lot of footprints unless it's fresh snow because it's so cold. Everything freezes so hard up there.
So there should be a frozen squatch up there, right?
There should be.
There should be, but if you go to Mount Everest, there
And we're going to
are
get to
untold hundreds of dead hikers up there that
That's
they
what I was
cannot
leaning to.
bring down, like the Green Boots or whatever his name is. They can't move him.
that. Is that like green sleeves?
Yeah. Well, he froze to the ground.
No,
Oh,
I think
yes.
it's a legal thing.
Well, it costs so much to get him down, too. I read about this not too long ago, as a matter of fact, that they get frozen to the ground, and that it's so dangerous for the Sherpas to bring the body down. It costs so much.
Just throw them off.
God, you are grumpy tonight.
They're dead. Like when I'm dead, I don't care what you do to me.
They are there, but what's wild is certain seasons
And there's,
they'll walk by these bodies.
yeah, and
Next season you won't maybe see them for 2 or 3 years.
So and let's we'll get back to that in a second. But let's look at the history of the Yeti, like we did the Sasquatch. The pre-19th century, the Yeti is worshipped by several Himalayan tribes and is called a glacier being and seen as a god of the hunt. So this is a creature that brings good fortune, or at least it's a good omen to see one. Okay, in the 19th century, 1832, explorer James Prinsep and his guide spot a tall bipedal creature covered in long dark hair fleeing in fear. He believes it to be an orangutan. Footprints are later reported in 1899 that are really similar to the ones that I showed y'all in the picture. They've got some human qualities. They've got some primate qualities, but they're somewhere in between. They're that strange middle ground. I need to do a little bit better with my... All right. So that brings us into the 20th century. All right, and with Westerners making frequent attempts to scale the many mountains encounters, and in the 20th century, that's when people from the West really start spending a lot more time in this part of the world. They start, coming to visit the mountains. Scientific expeditions start. People come in to study the cultures, and people start having a lot more experiences with this Yeti, whatever it is.
You don't think it's a placebo effect?
I think some of it could be. I mean, I don't know. Some of it is. Some of it isn't.
Suggestion,
All right, now here's your guy. 1953, Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay, the first men to reach the top of Mount Everest, report finding large footprints in the snow. Tenzing, who grew up in the region, knows of the legends surrounding the creature, but he had never seen it. So there he is faced with proof of these stories that he had grown up with. He knew what it was. He knew that this was this mythological or quasi-mythological creature, and he'd never seen it, but he could certainly recognize the tracks when he saw it. All right, and he had always grown up thinking that it was a large unknown ape. Now, the Himalayas are one of those connective points in the world. They're where a few different ecosystems and countries meet, and there's some exchanges. There's animals that use the area for migratory paths. There's stuff that passes through from time to time, but isn't there all the time. Why couldn't if the Yeti doesn't necessarily live in the Himalayas, maybe it lives in one of the more temperate, warmer places, and it comes into the Himalayas to hunt or to migrate? Because there are accounts of similar creatures that are not white. They're brown. They're black. They're
in the lower levels.
Yeah, and you could be seeing a few things.
Attacking the yak.
You could be seeing an animal that's, like some of the mammals that we have down in our part of the world, where their fur changes colors with the seasons. Maybe it's doing something similar to that. I'm going to take my headphones off.
Yeah, I had a horse that was primarily black, but in the wintertime, his winter coat come in, and it was almost like a silvery gray, because he would have such white and gray hairs mix in that he was almost gray. So that's very feasible right there.
I mean, I think it is.
I mean, my winter coat comes in on my back hair,
And now the next one's kind of interesting. On March 19th, 1954, an expedition obtains hair specimens from an alleged Yeti scalp found in the Pangbosh Monastery. The hair is a dark brown and reddish in color.
Cone-shaped, isn't it?
Further study of the hairs conclude that if the hairs are actually from the shoulder of a hooved mammal, perhaps a deer or a mountain goat.
Right.
But
is this the Tom Slick guy?
Tom Slick will be here in a minute. This is a similar thing.
He did a boo-boo. He did a bad thing.
Tom Slick had some problems.
He was a oil man from Texas, wasn't he?
He was. And Tom Slick went after the Loch Ness Monster and a few of the other...
Can I be a smartass before you say that?
Yeah.
Maybe the Sasquatch are really actually relatives of Chewbacca that fled their home planet after the Empire invaded.
There was a really good Star Wars comic that said that's exactly what they were. Because Indiana Jones found the Millennium Falcon had crashed in the redwoods. Falcon. The Millennium Falcon had crashed in the redwoods of California, and Han Solo had gotten out, and he and Chewbacca...
Oh, this is just blasphemy.
They got killed, or he got killed by Indians, and Chewie drug him back to the Millennium Falcon.
Well, it was in the galaxy a long time ago.
Well, it's just a perception of reality.
And Chewie ends up, he's stranded a million miles from Kashyyyk and the rest of the known galaxy, and he actually becomes the basis for the Bigfoot stories. It's a good one.
You were going to see a Sasquatch.
See?
You're going to believe in the Sasquatch.
I believe that.
Let me find the picture that they're referencing here. It's kind of neat. Yeah, here you go. Okay. So there is the alleged Yeti scalp.
And the hand.
And the hand. Now, both of those are considered holy relics in this monastery. I mean,
Josh Gates got to go see that, and they would not let him take hair samples, which he understood. And but at the same, they did let him take a piece of bone
from the hand.
From the hand and it come in inconclusive.
Well, what's funny about the hand is that you guys know who Jimmy Stewart is. Jimmy Stewart was actually accused of stealing a Yeti hand, and it kind of caused an international. With
Tom Slick.
Because Tom Slick put him up to it.
Yes,
I'd have done it.
You know who Jimmy Stewart is, right?
No,
the actor.
It's the guy from A Wonderful Life.
Oh yeah,
he wasn't Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird too, was he?
I believe so.
Okay,
but he was also in.
This is the big A-list movie star, and I guarantee you'd know him.
No, yeah.
Oh, my pet rabbit Harry.
Yeah, because he was in the one with the rabbit. All right. Yeah, but this thing is found to be a sculpted piece of hide from a goat, from a mountain goat, because they did manage to get some DNA tests. And I want to say the hands came from a bear. They were a bear claw.
Well, what Josh Gates got off the hand was inconclusive. It was there was not enough bone fragment there to get a true DNA deal. But Josh Gates did say that he took a lot of up close pictures, and he took it to the Gates guy or the.
Is that the one where he brought it back to the Museum of Natural History in Los Angeles?
Yes, and the guy said he thought it was bear pieces of bear claw and something else kind of put together.
But even if those aren't scientifically viable pieces of evidence for the abominable snowman, they are still culturally important to the Tibetans. And to me,
they're living on a lie.
Well, but still, it's a lie that's true to them. And just because one person's truth is different than another person's truth, all truth has validity. Now, I realize that I'm talking to a Bible-thumping Christian.
No!
I'm about to get it. But
No!
Yes.
No, it's just if you know something to be farce, and you continue to you can't change somebody's point of view.
But think of it this way. Every legend has to have a source.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
They have a shit source.
Yes, it does. Okay. And we are totally getting off track. Why does the story of Noah's Ark exist in every single culture around the world? The Polynesians have it. The Aboriginal Australians have it. The Indians have it. The Chinese have it. Sumerians. All of those guys have it.
Because it's true.
Okay. Could there have been more than one ark?
I mean, if it's a different story.
It's really not. It's
because I can go home and build an ark.
Destroying the earth and saying, "Hey, there was
the story of Gilgamesh is way over than
the story of Noah."
I just think that if you tell somebody, "Hey, that we can prove that this isn't real," you should.
This we can prove. Is not real.
Yeah,
there's a few other pieces that are a little bit more problematic.
No, I'm just talking about that.
So, 1957, millionaire oil man Tom Slick funds a mission to search for the Yeti.
He would have been fun to hang around. This old boy was up for an adventure.
He collects feces from an unknown animal containing an unknown primate. Not primate, an unknown parasite.
Oh.
Now, nature is really weird in the way that it does things sometimes. It's really big on symbiosis, mutually beneficial relationships. Even within the human body, there are jungles and ecosystems inside us. Animals, even more so. Because humans use medicine, and we clean ourselves. We do stuff that gets rid of some of the less beneficial, the less nicer creatures like this. In this one, there was a parasite that nobody had ever seen before. But where they had seen things similar to this parasite were in the feces of known primates. Humans don't have that particular branch, but things the bigger, greater primates had it. So that right there, if that's not enough evidence, if the scalp and the hand aren't enough evidence, a unknown parasite from an unknown creature, that's pretty good evidence, I think.
There has been also, evidence from poop.
Which is what this is. Feces is poop.
And,
sorry, you never know with this crowd.
but,
Bigfoot shit.
There's
Don't spray water.
Hair follicles and, been hair samples that have been attained. And there was actually a footprint that was cast that had stepped in poop. And it tracked poop for a while.
Another really interesting thing that came about this discovery of a new species in the feces from an unknown source is that the United States government believes so firmly in this that they actually set up a series of guidelines for expeditions seeking the Yeti. Number one, you have to obtain a Nepalese permit. You have to go in and talk to the people of Nepal and say, this is what we're going to do. This is what we'd like to do. Yay or nay. So, number one, you got to get permission, which is always good.
You asked Siri a question.
Oh, I did. Good for you.
What was the question?
I think I asked her how to get a permit to hunt a Yeti. All right. Number two, you do not harm the Yeti unless in self-defense. So there's the old cliche of, it's coming right at us. Boom, 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 boom. And that's something that you see in Bigfoot. You also see it in the Loch Ness Monster. Whatever they are, be they real or not, the respective governments which have jurisdiction around them believe in them so firmly that it is considered, in some cases, a capital offense to kill these things. They're either considered protected species or endangered species. Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster both are even given scientific names. The one for Bigfoot is kind of interesting, and I have to be careful how I say it because it'll sound like something else if I don't. The scientific name for Bigfoot, which is what he's categorized, if you go into the Parks and Wildlife directory of known species in certain parks, they have Bigfoot listed as Bipedus gigantus, the giant biped. That's Bipedus gigantus. And you understand why you have to be careful how you say that, because the very first time I said that, somebody looked at me and were like, oh my God, what are you saying? It's like, no, Bipedus gigantus.
Yes, a devil dog.
Now, the Loch Ness Monster has a really cool one, too. The scientific name for Nessie is Nessiteris rhombohedrix, which means the Loch Ness dragon with the diamond fin, because Nessie's flippers are believed to be in the shape of a diamond or a spade, and there's some pretty interesting evidence that suggests that. All right, so number one, you have to obtain a permit from the Nepalese. Number two, you can't harm the Yeti except in self-defense. Number three, the Nepalese government has to approve any news reporting on the animal's discovery. So if you find it, you have to get their blessing on.
Oh my! That just speaks of corruption.
But they did the same thing when Josh Gates found that Yeti track on Destination Truth.
Yes, they did.
In fact, he wasn't allowed to leave the country until they had given him a copy of it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, does that speak of corruption?
Oh,
or does that? To me, that speaks of truth.
I got to pay you to come look for something?
Well, it's like the government, United States government.
Oh, and they're not corrupt.
Conspiracy stuff like UFOs, all that kind of stuff like that. They're going to regulate.
Yeah, so they can make money off of it.
Right.
But
I found something interesting.
Now this doesn't say anything about, an international permit to hunt or to search for a Yeti. That couldn't be that much in the grand scheme of things. Nobody becomes a scientist to be rich.
No, true. I have found something interesting, folks. This is the official website of the BFRO, Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization.
Excuse me.
Where your buddy Bobo.
He ain't my buddy. He's a freaking retard.
Yeah, he is. But they
I make fun of him on
catalog
South Park.
official listings by state. And
He's a North American wood ape.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So what state would you figure would be the most in Bigfoot sightings? And I kind of pegged this one.
Probably the Virginias.
Actually, it was Washington, Pacific Northwest. It was Washington
I
State.
figured that was vampires.
No, that's Twilight. in the dark. And I was kind of shocked. Florida, I knew would be in the top 3.
Right.
It was number 2. But being Washington was 646 sightings,
Okay.
documented sightings, versus Florida's 314 sightings. Guess which state come in third place?
Texas.
I want to say Texas.
No, they're actually 4th.
Oklahoma.
No, they're way down there.
Georgia.
Nope.
Well, Georgia's
Louisiana.
Georgia's always on my mind.
No, Louisiana is 43 documented sightings.
Even with all that voodoo stuff
And
going on there?
Oklahoma was 94.
Okay.
There ain't nothing in Oklahoma.
I figured Oregon would be up there. They're number 4 with
California.
246 sightings. But the number 3 state in the United States is Ohio.
Really? Because nobody goes there, and they're like, "Hey, this is a great place for a big cryptid to
No,
live."
I take that back.
figured Alaska
They are
would be up
4th
there.
place. California is 2nd place with 437 sightings.
Because do you know how many young
Hollywood is
Sasquatch
there.
everydays go to Hollywood in the hopes of making it big, in the hopes of landing their being the next big reality
Well, you
TV
know,
star?
Harry made it with the Hendersons.
Yeah. Chewbacca is a great rags to
Yeah.
riches story,
Yeah, and his brother, that was a stunt double.
and we all know King Kong.
Yeah.
How many movies has he been in?
Well, yeah.
King Kong is an international
And
icon.
there's Curious George.
There is. All right, so in 1959, actor Jimmy Stewart reportedly smuggles the Pangbachi hand out of India and into London. The Pangbachi hand is something really similar to the picture that we showed. Pull up a picture of Jimmy Stewart, because I know you'll know him when you see him.
Who did he? What movies did he play?
He was in. Did you ever see A Wonderful Life?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's the main character in A Wonderful
Oh, okay.
Life.
Yeah.
All right, and then 1960, Sir Edmund Hillary mounts another expedition, and a second Yeti scalp. I can't talk now. I've got a frog in my throat. And a second Yeti scalp is obtained. It is found to be sculpted from the skin of a scrow, which is a goat-like Himalayan antelope.
Where are you? Go to Google Pictures. There you go. Or images.
All right, now here's another interesting one, and to me, this doesn't suggest corruption. This suggests a government trying to
Yeah.
protect a national treasure. In 1984, the Makilo Baron National Park in Tibet and the Kwamalonga National Nature Preserve, just over the border in China, designate a 6.5 million acre settlement as a Yeti preserve.
Jesus Christ.
No, he's down in the Middle East. This is China. This would be Buddha, and some of the Zoroastrians.
Mao
and Muslims.
Zedong.
You shouldn't take.
Jesus.
You should not take the Lord's
That's
name
not.
in vain.
That's
anyway.
not taking his name in vain.
All right. So
I do have
If
a funny
it's-
story later for you about that.
if
yeah.
it's not real, if it's a money-making opportunity, if it's an attention-gathering opportunity, why in the hell would you set apart 6.5 million acres for something that's not?
I can answer that.
Unless it's a cover-up for something else. Unless it's a good place for the Chinese
China?
area, Chinese Area 51.
Well, I was going to say either that, or is there an actual place where you can go explore that preserve?
As far as I know, this is open to the public, from what I understood.
Well, there might be a point of entry, and you have to pay
There might be.
a $24.90 or whatever their money is called over there.
90.
Yeah.
and be like what that Malcolm guy on Jurassic Park. There are going to be dinosaurs on this tour at some point.
Now
right?
eventually
He's
there is
my
going to
favorite
be
character in that
there is
movie.
eventually going to be an abominable snowman on this abominable snowman park.
Right.
right, so possible explanations for the Yeti. Bears. The Tibetan blue bear or the Himalayan brown bear when seen at a distance. Bears rear up on their hind legs and
walk.
They walk. They don't walk for great distances, but if you saw one from
They
a ways
walk
away...
like my 1-year-old granddaughter.
Well...
You got some hillbilly from Johnson County in Tibet.
Another one is an old, crazy, very tough hermit. Somebody that's just had enough of the world and has gone up to live by himself and has covered himself in furs and warm wools to keep, from freezing up there.
Wind up looking like what's his name, Brad Pitt at the end of that movie, River Runs Through It or somewhere.
Yeah.
He attacks the bear.
And then there's our old buddy Gigantopithecus, because Gigantopithecus is in the right part of the world. I think the Abominable Snowman and the Yeti, or not the Abominable Snowman and Bigfoot, I think those two are two different names for basically the same kind of animal.
Got a question.
What's that?
For you. On this Gigantopithecus, you say there's only a partial jaw?
Yeah, and it's maybe...
Oh, that's like Lucy.
Lucy's much better represented than Gigantopithecus is. On the Gigantopithecus, I want to say it's from like here up here, and then there's a handful of teeth. And all of this was recovered from a Chinese apothecary store. The Chinese are notorious for taking fossils and bones and grounding them into folk medicines.
Exactly.
Powders, paste, stuff like that.
Okay.
And hell, they do it with endangered species.
Is that the only piece that they've
It
ever
is.
found?
It is.
So what is to say that Gigantopithecus was maybe a deformed? Because,
the fossils are an anomaly of something that...
Yeah, look at John Merrick, the Elephant Man. Mm-hmm. Okay? If someone found a partial side of his skull that had the calcium deposit deformities that made his jaw grow bigger and everything, if you just had that piece, you would think this man had to be 9 foot tall.
Right.
That's all they have.
Yeah.
The dark brown.
Yeah. So...
And that's my problem with like you said earlier, with paleontology.
See, I always thought they had more because they've come up with they have this gigantic skeleton and everything like that.
Well, that's because they draw conclusions. They want an answer so desperately.
And it sells. You can make stuffed animals, you can make merchandise, you can do that kind of stuff with it.
I was always of the assumption, which I know what assume means, makes an ass out of you and me. But I was always of the assumption that there was several skulls, partial skeletons.
I wish there were, but there's not.
Huh.
That's what sets him apart from... He'll actually admit it.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Depends what kind of mood I'm in. But, it's Gigantopithecus is not the only creature that we do that with. I mean, there's... Okay. Did you guys ever see... You guys have seen the Jurassic Park movies, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Remember in the third Jurassic Park movie, the Spinosaurus? Mm-hmm. The big... It's got a snout like a crocodile, big dorsal fin. For the longest time, we weren't sure what that looked like. So we filled in the...
So that was a real dinosaur?
Oh, that was a very real dinosaur. And we took the missing pieces and we built it the way that we thought it would look like. Meaning that we took inspiration from the other big bipedal carnivorous dinosaurs. T-Rex, Allosaurus, stuff like that. We gave it proportionate arms and legs, a tail, and we had it do what it did in Jurassic Park 3. Well, they finally found a complete skeleton of all of this one. The very first specimens were actually destroyed in World War II. They were in a German museum that happened to be right across the street from a munitions factory, and the Allies bombed the hell out of the whole block just to make sure they got the munitions factory. But when they found much more complete remains of Spinosaurus wasn't a biped anymore. Spinosaurus became the first quadrupedal carnivorous dinosaur. And, I mean, it was basically a cross between a crocodile and a dinosaur. This was something that led a almost completely aquatic life. And the best thing you could account it to would be like a big, angry hippopotamus. This guy lived in water 90% of the time. And he probably crawled out on the beach to sun himself like a gator does. But you
Now,
wouldn't...
how would they know that it would live most of its life?
It's inference. It's the fact that it's got some traits that you see a whole lot of things similar to in alligators and crocodiles, things that spend a fair amount of time in the water.
Okay.
And in its gut, they found the bones from fish and a lot of other marine aquatic type creatures. So there's a fair amount of evidence for it.
And it's not as big either.
It actually is. It's still the biggest carnivorous dinosaur that we have.
It's bigger than T-Rex?
Oh, yeah, it's longer than T-Rex is.
Well, I meant tall.
No.
That's what I'm talking about.
But
tall.
in terms of length and mass, it's still huge.
Yeah, it's very... I'm looking at it now.
All right, so our last one is Orang Pendak. And Orang Pendak, as cryptids go, is a relatively new addition. Did we get some questions? Or?
Yeah, we'd have a really good question from Amanda Whitehead again.
Hey, Dad. Dad's on now.
Oh, it goes back to when you were speaking of scientific classifications and names. She asks, what criteria must be met to give a species a scientific classification?
A classification? To give a species a classification, you look at who it's similar to, who it's related to, and, form and functionality. Does it fit in with traits of a reptile? Does it fit in with traits of a mammal? Does it fit in with traits of a bird? You take the group that it fits in the most with, and you basically whittle it down until it can fit into the very best peg. I mean, it's very much, you match up sequences. You match up where does you almost play the old game, one of these things is not like the other, one of these things just isn't the same, and that's how you do it. Now the cool thing is that whoever finds a new species, new animal, they get to name it, which, I mean, you can have a great, beautiful, eloquent scientific name, or you can name it after your mama, or you can name it after your dog, or you can name it after yourself. It's generally considered in pretty poor taste to find an animal and name it after yourself, because you think that you'd give that honor to your friends or your wife or somebody like that. So it's almost a taboo to name stuff after yourself. But yeah, that's the way that we determine classification.
I would love to name a dinosaur after me. Sasquatchosaurus.
That could work.
Squatchosaurus.
It's a squatchodon. All right, so Orang Pendak. Orang Pendak is the most common name given to a small primate that inhabits remote mountainous forest on the island of Sumatra. It has been seen and documented for the last 100 years by forest tribes, local villagers, Dutch colonists, and Western scientists and travelers. It's a ground-dwelling bipedal primate covered in short fur that stands between 30 and 60 inches tall. Its name in Indonesian means short person. Now, Sumatra is the same island where, just a few years ago, they actually found the remains of a new species of fossil humanoid called Homo florensis, which is a pygmy human being. And I mean, it's a really interesting little animal. I'm going to find a picture of it here. That is a reconstruction of Homo florensis. Now, unlike Lucy and Gigantopithecus, there are literally hundreds of relatively complete skeletons comprised of thousands of bones of Homo florensis, men, women, and children, from a genders and ages, a variety of ranges.
Why can't they just be small people?
They're not, because the smallest ones, it's morphologically different than a modern, anatomically modern, what we consider a human being, something like me and you. It's a completely new species. It's something that's unique in and to itself. It's said to be mostly herbivorous, sometimes raiding the crops of corn, potatoes, and fruit. It also likes ginger, roots, bugs, and river crabs. So, Sasquatch, if something eats both plants and animals, what is it?
Omnivorous.
It's omnivorous. It's the best of both worlds. And like I said before, the majority of primates are omnivores because it just makes sense. It's more, you're less likely to starve if you can eat a lot of different things. Orang Pendak are also quick-witted and said to travel in groups of 5 or 6. Most of the time with these other man-like primates and cryptids that we've talked about, they're relatively solitary. You might get the occasional sighting of 1 or 2 together, but with Orang Pendaks, you get groups of 5 or 6. Now, Orang Pendak is smaller than the ones that we've talked about before. And this is a little guy that's 3 to 4 feet tall. What are some advantages of running in a pack if you're small as opposed to running by yourself?
You outrun the others.
Well, there's safety in numbers.
Yeah.
Because you might be foraging in the creek bed, catching crawdads, or pulling stuff out of the trees. You don't have to be completely aware of your surroundings because you're going to have your friends that are keeping an eye on what's going on around you. There's always safety in numbers. And pack animals are more intelligent than solitary creatures are because you have to have a higher brain function and brain capacity to coordinate group efforts. There's also strange footprints with a variety of features found in gibbon, orangutan, chimp, and human feet that have been discovered, as well as hair samples which contained human DNA. Now, the reason that the Orang Pendak samples contained human DNA was because they were corrupted. They were contaminated. It was a very poor example of somebody not putting gloves on, somebody not being protective, being proper when they touched these things, when they were dealing with a sample. Now, what's interesting, that's an Orang Pendak footprint. Notice how that's different than a Bigfoot footprint.
Yeah, that looks more monkeyish.
Yeah, let's hold that up for the people at home.
For the
All right.
lovely people that are
This
out there.
is the footprint, allegedly,
Just see a
of an Orang
footprint.
Pendak.
The
Now,
Orang
it's much different than the
Very much
footprint of a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch or the Yeti and those other ones, because this is far less humanoid. It's got 4 toes on the top. The opposable, what we would consider a thumb, is on the side. This thing is it's more primitive than what we've seen in the other tracks. And again, it's got, it's the best of both worlds. Now, one feature that we did not talk about with good primate tracks are the presence of dermal ridges. Now, a dermal ridge is just a fancy way of saying fingerprints. In the very best examples of Sasquatch prints, when examined under electromagnetic microscopes, they can see the fingerprints of the toes. They can see the grooves of the skin on the flat of the foot. That is just there's too much work that it would take for some hoaxer out in the woods to do something like that.
Well, that's funny you say that, because I was answering a question from Amanda Whitehead. She said, but with Bigfoot or Yeti, there is no evidence found. How does it get named? And I said, there are circumstantial evidence, undocumented or unclassified DNA and hair samples, along with footprints. The footprints would be great evidence, and I'm sorry I got finger happy, but it should say the footprints would be great evidence in an FBI investigation, because FBI has studied some of these.
There was a trackway made from a Sasquatch. The Sasquatch had one of his feet that appears to be severely injured. The other foot left, and a nicely preserved 5-toed, roughly humanoid-shaped footprint. The other one, the foot had been mangled, maybe through arthritis, maybe through accident, maybe through something.
It also, this just kind of hit me, thinking back to like Egyptian pharaohs and stuff like that, of decades and decades
of inbreeding.
And generation of inbreeding.
Okay.
Like you look at King Tut, his mother was Nefertiti, his father was, their brothers and sisters were husbands and wives for years, and he was severely club-footed, buck-toothed, deformed.
But with this Cripplefoot trackway, which exhibits that, which could very well be, indicative of inbreeding and genetic disorders. The scientist who found them was the anthropologist that we referenced earlier, Grover Krantz, PhD, respected professor, just did a lot of groundbreaking work. Absolutely threw his career away when he got interested in cryptozoology. But when he examined these tracks, he found the dermal ridges. He found that the quasi-microscopic evidence. When he did that, he did the next good thing that a scientist should always do. He went for another opinion. In Grover Krantz's case, he went for two more. He went for the opinion of the FBI crime lab in Washington, D.C., and he went for the opinion of Scotland Yard. And both... Go ahead.
You can't get any better than those two.
No.
For somebody to have your back and say, yeah,
Both of them found the dermal ridges. Both of them agreed that this was made by a very real, unknown organism. What was really funny was what Scotland Yard told him. Scotland Yard told him, they said, you've got the same problem that we have. And he didn't immediately catch what they were inferring. He said, well, what do you mean? And he goes, they go, well, you've got something big and weird and unknown and very real walking around in your forest. We've got something big and weird and very real swimming around in one of our lakes, making reference to the Loch Ness Monster. That, to me, the dermal ridges in the tracks of Bigfoot, in the tracks of these similar creatures, that's the best evidence, I think.
Well, yeah. And you go to some of the best samples of footprints found especially up in the Pacific Northwest. You got rainforest area. You've got everything like that. Flat ground. You got somebody with fake footprints going out there. Yeah, they're going to make perfect footprints going up and down, but there's hundreds and hundreds of footprint impressions that have been molded. That when they go up a slack grade, you're going to put different pressures on different parts of your feet. They're going to dig in still. They'll step up over this little deal. It's going to dig in. Toes going to react and spread and do all that stuff. They have all that. Shaquille O'Neal ain't got nothing on these feet. They are just they're huge. And the neat part is they're all different. There are
variations on a theme.
Yes.
And we'll go back to the orang pendak once more, because I know Amanda and some of the other folks have asked, what are the folkloric and the ethnic histories and traditions of these things. Well, for hundreds of years, maybe even thousands, the indigenous people on the island of Sumatra talked about the little man of the forest, these enigmatic little creatures that weren't human, they weren't orangutan, they weren't anything else, they were something different. And then when they found the fossils of Homo florensis, 10 or so years back, it substantiated these stories. It's like, okay, we've got fossil evidence from dozens of individuals that corroborate our stories, that say, okay, it might not be here right now, but it used to be. Right. That's, in fact, I would dare say that if any of these creatures, including the one that we're going to close with, were to be found, the orang pendak probably stands the greatest chance of it. Because Sumatra is little, there's only so many places it can hide, and there's bukus of evidence to support it.
Now, Sumatra has a lot of caves.
Yes, Sumatra's got caves and jungles and all kinds of places for a time.
They got cave systems that go for miles and miles and just branch off.
It was funny because when we'll go back to Josh Gates went to Sumatra to look for the orang pendak, and he was talking to I believe she was a British zoologist, and she said, well, he told her why he was there and what they were looking for. And he asked her, he said, okay, do you believe in this thing? And she said, I do. And he goes, well, why? Nobody's ever seen them. It's a small island. And she goes, well, let me tell you why I think there's a possibility for this thing. I've been working the jungle for 20 plus years. I knew full well that there are tigers out there. I've found footprints. I've heard natives talk about them. It was not until a year ago that I finally saw one. So she knew that there was an animal there, but there were so many places for it to hide. It was so good at what it was doing, keeping away from humans.
It's real thick, deep jungle.
It's thick, nasty jungle. And you know, she knew the animals there. She'd worked there for 20 years. She'd only seen one.
Wow.
Who knows what else could be hiding out there? Hey, Amanda, you are more than welcome again to call us. Anybody else is welcome to call us that wants to talk Bigfoot or Sasquatch or anything else at 817-506-7257. We would welcome an addition to this conversation.
And we're going to take a short little commercial break, and we'll be back, and we'll keep this going as long as you want to.
Yeah.
We ain't got nothing else to do.
No, and we got one more really interesting creature to talk about, too. So we'll be back in a few minutes, and we hope you join us.
I do. I have to go back to the casa.
Oh! You going to the house?
Not right now. I will here in a minute. About 9 o'clock. Because it's almost 9 o'clock. Yeah.
We didn't catch any trains. But it looks like we've got a few people that have signed on and are watching. Ryan Ayers and Brandon Way. And guys, we are on a commercial break, so we'll be back to cryptozoology in just a few minutes.
That's what happens on Saturday nights on Tina's show, Cruising with Tina Lynn. We'll get ready to be closing out our, and then, man, 50 people will get on there and start doing requests like that one night.
Yeah.
We wind up staying till like 10 o'clock.
Wow.
Going. Which, tune in tomorrow night for Cruising with Tina Lynn from 7 to 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. We play all your favorite hits from 50s to the 80s.
I thought y'all were going to come over tomorrow night, and we were going to podcast playing Cards Against Humanity.
I didn't know about that.
I didn't either.
I know.
Oh, you didn't invite me? Well.
No, it was Johnny on the spot.
Okay.
Oh.
How do you like them apples? No, I'm going to try to get my YouTube channel back up.
What's that? That Cards Against Humanity.
You know what that is?
I've heard about it.
It's a pretty. It can be a raunchy game if you're.
If you let it, which
you're
I'd highly recommend.
Well, my buddy's got another game. It's basically like Interview, where you're trying to interview for a job.
You want to just completely bomb it.
And you use different. You got to persuade the person hired you, so it can get really. It can also get really raunchy. Like,
No kidding.
Like you pull a card and it says, you know, I own my own club. Why should I hire you? You know, different.
I saw a new one. We got the one. We took it over to my oldest daughter's house. It's that one where
We have that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, she's a dental tech and dental assistant, and she is like anal about the teeth. So she had gotten that. We played this game, and she got out.
You have to
Everybody
boil
had
it.
their own baggie. Everybody had their own baggie. And for all the people this happened to, she grabbed my mom's after my mom had already used it, put it in her mouth.
And that's how flus and communicable diseases are
But,
spread.
I mean, for the one
Unless you're
person
like
for
me
that
and
to
you don't
happen
get
to.
the shots.
But there's another one I want to hear where you put. I want to do. I saw it on Facebook where you put noise canceling headphones on, and then you got to lip read what the person's reading you. Little cards.
Oh, I did that on a similar thing in a paranormal investigation that we did, which I knew damn well there was no monsters there. And they put earphones on you, and you're supposed to, the ghost is supposed to be able to talk through the earphones, and you're supposed to repeat back what you hear. Well, I've always been blessed with a great sense of hearing because my eyes suck, and I could hear the questions that they were asking. And I get a little bored and mischievous sometimes. So I came up with the story that I wanted to, collaborate with on the stuff. And when they'd say something, I'd throw a word out. Be like, cold, black, death. And they just went into theatrics. And Christy pulls me aside after and she goes, you heard every word we said, didn't you? I said, yes, ma'am, I'm sorry. That's one reason I love Christy, because Christy calls me on my stuff. one of the very few people that can do it and get away with it.
So you did the can opener for Sheldon's string theory deal up at the North Pole.
Right.
That's great.
All right, so are we back yet?
Quit yawning. You're going to get me to yawn. Where you want to eat after this, by the way?
I don't care. Are you buying?
I get a couple dollars.
Okay, well,
I think
I
of
got
Jack in
you.
the Box tacos.
Okay. I hadn't eaten all day. All right, so are we back yet? Or are we still on commercials?
We're still on commercials.
Yeah, I
We're doing
need
a double
to.
set. We're doing double sets of commercials because we're going a whole hour.
I like it.
You know, I've really come to dislike Sigmund Freud.
And Amanda says, this has been fun, guys, but dinner is ready. Amanda, have a good dinner and tell your new husband hi for me, and hopefully we can meet up one day in the near future. Y'all have a good night. Thanks for watching.
So on this Sigmund Freud deal, is it all because
Tell me
of
about your
father?
mother.
No, my issue with him is he's too big on everything sexually driven.
3, 2, 1.
And we are back on Johnson County Paranormal, where we are wrapping up our discussion of Bigfoot and the related humanoid cryptids. Now, I think we've saved one of the best for last, because we're going to get away from the more animal-like cryptids, the Bigfoot, the Yeti, the Orang Pendek, the ones that we've just talked about for those folks that are moving in. And we're going to talk about something rather unique. We're going to talk about one from Central Europe and Russia called the Alma, A-L-M-A. And in some cases, it's a wild man that is said to inhabit the Caucasus and Pamir Mountains of Central Asia and the Altai Mountains of southern Mongolia. Now, these have some commonalities with Bigfoot, but they've got some stuff that's pretty different too. All right. These, of course, are human-like bipeds. They stand between 5 and 6.5 feet tall. The bodies are covered with reddish-brown hair, and they have a pronounced brow ridge, flat nose, and a weak chin.
Now this is the group that I'd heard the story about the Russian farmer who had caught a female of this and kept her in a root cellar, and they actually had. In fact, this was a Josh Gates deal.
Yeah,
and they had found the great-grandson or something that was supposedly the offspring of this farmer and the wild woman, and he was a big brutish guy.
Right.
His DNA.
He was completely human according to the DNA, but it was a little bit different.
Yeah, it was a little strange, but his features. He
had some Neanderthal-like traits.
He had a big brow, and he was a big, strong man. He'd been some kind of champion fighter,
a cage fighter or something, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Because how they caught the mama, the female, was this farmer had been having some problems. His crops had been raided. Somebody had been doing some petty vandalism and whatnot, and he set a trap for him, and they ended up catching this woman. Well, he catches her, and he was like, "Oh, that's not at all what I was expecting." Brought her in. He was under the impression that she was poor. She was a hermit. She was living out there in the wild somewhere. Brought her in, took care of her, and basically domesticates her. And eventually one thing leads to another, and they produce children.
I think it was 3.
Yeah, 3 of them. And I want to say, didn't 2 of them die?
Yeah, I don't think they've made it to their 30s.
Right.
I think they died before that.
But just and they it was a really interesting story, because the DNA from the child was human, but it was different. Now, Neanderthals are interesting, because when I read the description here, and it's this is a creature that's a human-like biped, 5 to 6.5 feet tall, bodies covered in reddish brown hair, with a pronounced brow ridge, flat nose, and weak chin. as someone with a strong background in physical anthropology and a more than healthy knowledge of extinct humanoid species, that sounds for all the world like a Neanderthal. Now, contrary to what we've been led to believe thanks to popular media, Neanderthals were not big, dumb, brutish cavemen. Neanderthals were intelligent. Neanderthals buried their dead. Neanderthals had culture. Neanderthals painted on caves. Neanderthals had fire. Neanderthals had all kinds of really cool stuff. They were not another dumb animal. What a Neanderthal was another species of human being. And it's interesting because, go ahead.
I found a later picture of the Russian wild woman after.
That's a Neanderthal. That's a Neanderthal.
She had been kind of domesticated and stuff, and been with the man for years.
But what's interesting is that we know that Neanderthals and archaic human beings interbred, because in almost every single person alive today, there is a small portion of Neanderthal DNA. Humans, modern humans, are an example.
Living son that survived.
An Iraqi.
Yeah. Our species is a combination of archaic human and Neanderthal. To me, it is entirely possible that somewhere out in these wild woods, wild deserts, whatever they are, there could be a remnant population of very, very primitive humans. And I say Neanderthal because a Neanderthal is just a different kind of human, so I'm going to use that term relatively interchangeably. What are you laughing at?
Pictures of old wild women.
Yeah, you did a nasty Google search, didn't you?
Well, it was.
Oh, look out. Boy, that's unfortunate. Where are her legs?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that fur, or does she have like buffalo skin on her?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But and another thing that's interesting about
She's a
these
furry trout.
another thing that's interesting about these Almas is that the Almas interact with farmers. There are accounts of farmers out there who trade with these things, and these are not like big dumb animals. These guys they wear clothes like what we would think of traditional caveman type clothing, and they've got stone tools and weapons. So to me, an Alma represents a remnant population of what we would consider cavemen. People that just never got with the time for whatever reason. So, I don't know. Now, unfortunately, encounters with the Almas have become very, very, very rare. So, that almost suggests to certain researchers that the Alma has either become extinct.
How do you spell that?
You spell that ALMAS. That the Alma has either become completely extinct, or it's been incorporated into modern human society of the area. You know, those guys came out of the woods.
Here's the great-grandson.
Well, he looks happy.
That's a...
Just like a ugly human.
Yeah, but look
Genetics are great. Mm-hmm. Are you going to try to zoom in on his eyebrows?
Well, you can... Yeah, he looks like a typical cave person in a museum.
It's racist.
How is it racist?
That's just racist.
No, it's not.
That's not racist.
No, it's not. If anything, that's specious.
Can y'all see this?
Speciest.
No, that's not racist at all. Look, all right. All right, so I have a sneaking feeling that you've been holding your tongue on a lot of the things we've talked about tonight. Would you like to tell us your spiel? I know full well that we haven't made you a true believer.
No.
We probably haven't even strengthened our case
I've
in a lot
never
of instances.
heard of this one.
What is it?
The 8 Men of Basal.
Basal? What?
Oh, that's like the Deloitte ape.
pretty cool looking.
Well, even if they came out, I mean,
Here, you guys look through these pictures and tell me what you think. These are the illustrations that we used in the.
I looked at those, so you take them.
But I don't know. This.
I think some of it's really far-fetched to...
Some of it.
It wouldn't change the way I view a thing if they happened to come out and say, "Oh, dude, we caught this giant ape in the mountains of Ohio." Are there mountains in Ohio?
There are now. If you're familiar with Ohio geography and topography and would like to prove us wrong,
it's hilly. It's not mountain.
Right.
I don't know. It's just some of this what they try to connect the dots. It pushes people further away.
No, I agree. And that's one of the things that absolutely drives me up the wall on the cryptozoology programs, where they talk about these animals like they know them, like they've seen them in the zoo somewhere. And the simple thing is, we don't. Yeah. You can only infer so much without sounding like you're...
Well, then I'll go. Well, I kept a lot of it shut because I am a little feisty tonight, but what really irritated the dog shit out of me was you gotta go get a permit, and this is going off on a completely different rant, but you gotta go get a permit to go look for something that hasn't even been really found.
Well, you have to get a permit because you're a group of foreigners going into...
Well, I'm sure you have to do something very similar here.
Yeah. Well, not entirely, because it's home soil. Yeah. But what's interesting to me on that...
You can protect a species that's not even realistically real. I don't want to put that term.
But what if it is?
But we're killing babies.
Well... I'm not saying I could go so far with that.
I know.
No.
But see, that's why I kept my mouth shut, is because if I'm going to complain about somebody making irrational connections, I can't make irrational connections myself to try to justify why the hell they're doing it. You know what I mean?
I mean, our species is notorious for making irrational connections.
You know, like I said, when you were taking a pee, I was telling Squatch, I said, I go home and it's dark.
Thanks for putting my business out there. I appreciate it.
You know what? It's all right. I mean, it's a human thing.
It is.
We pee.
Some of us...
I can be sitting at my house watching Supernatural and my eyes play tricks on me.
Does it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Or is there
some
hate there?
No, because it'll be my son's freaking stormtrooper mask in his room.
I tell you, one of the scariest things that happened to me.
You look down?
No, it was... No, I ain't seen that in years. Big belly, folks. Big belly. No, that movie, The Ring, come out, you know, with the little girl.
Oh, yeah, where she popped out the...
Okay. I was with my ex-wife at the time. We had watched that movie that weekend. And my stepdaughter had come home. She was about 5 at the time. And her dad had brought her home. And where our bedroom was, there was a hallway to her bedroom, and then it opened into the living room. I sleep on this side of the bed so I can see down the hallway and everything. And I see something out of the corner of my eye. I'm dozing off pretty good and everything. And I forgot she sleepwalks. So she has this little white gown on. She's got long blonde hair, and it's hanging down over her face. I forget she's home because I was tired. I've been asleep. I come around that corner, and she's sitting on the couch back to me. I'm like, hello?
The hell are you?
And then I realized, okay, that's her. So I call. She doesn't move. This is how I found out she sleepwalks.
Her head turns 360 degrees.
Hello, Daddy.
I go over to her. The hair is covering her face, everything. I'm like, she's sound asleep. She stands up, follows me. I walk her back and put her back in bed. Mm-mm. But man, my heart, it was like that Daffy Duck deal go, boom, boom, boom.
I had to tell my son too, because he used to come over and stand over. Like when he was younger, he would stand over White. And I woke up one time and, son, for your safety, do not do that again.
Well, and that was one thing we learned real quick growing up was you basically had two options if you need mom and dad in the middle of the night. You can stay in bed and you can yell for them, and they'll answer, usually mama, because mama's a light sleeper. But if that doesn't work, and if you want to be quieter, you go into the bedroom and get them. But you always approached mama's side of the bed, because I think mothers have that natural disposition to not awake with a start. They just, well, hey, how are you? Because I think nature programs them that. The one or two times we went over to Daddy's side, Dad is
he's a big man.
Yeah, he's a big man. He's a badass Texas Ranger. He's programmed to kill. He'd lunge and he'd grab at you, or he'd grab you, and it would take a minute. It was, hey, that's my kid. And after that happens to you a couple of times, you learn, hey, I'm going to go to mama's side from now on.
Yeah.
Well, I was fortunate. I'm fortunate enough to where I've been to that process where I'm starting to, but my trained to react to your situation.
Right.
Yeah. So but now he just stays in the living room.
Yeah, I used to swing when I got woke up, but I put my good ear into the pillow so I can't hear anything. But people would come, and I had buddies that used to think it was hilarious to come in there and just, if I worked nights and was asleep during the day, come in there to wake me up, just jump on the bed. I'm coming up swinging because I can't hear them coming. And all of a sudden something's landing on top of me. And
that fight or flight kicks on.
Yeah, and I'm a fighter. I'm not a flighter.
Anybody that knows me, there's two things you don't do. There's you come up behind me and you don't scare me.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're about out of time, aren't we?
Because that's my primatal.
All right. Well, thank you all very much for tuning in tonight. And we had a great program, and that's as much you guys as it is us. And we will catch y'all again next week, where we'll delve into a different type of cryptozoology, and we're going to talk about some different monsters next week. And we hope you will join us. Until then, have a good night, be safe, and we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.
Thank you for spending your evening with us. We value each and every one of